warriors. That's it. That's all they do. They
she went to Cornell.
She went to Cornell.
Come on.
You think don't let her treat you like you're stupid, okay? She got her higher education. She knows the way the world works. She and other Republicans, conservatives, they know how the world works. If you don't have any education, if you don't have higher education, your chances of earning a decent income in this country, very slim, okay?
Yeah, well, so Ann Coulter and all the other conservatives can't fill your head with junk if you already learned something about the world.
Right.
So whatever you do, don't trust colleges, don't trust the media, don't trust science, don't trust anything that brings you facts. If you went to a real university, you might not then go to Trump University, and that would cost Donald Trump some money.
Yeah, well, they want to scam you and they want to manipulate you, and the easiest way to do that is to keep you uneducated. All right, so let's move on to other portions of this survey that were super interesting. So let's go to graphic 4. Republicans, by about 8-1, 85% to 10%, say the news media has a negative effect. These views have changed little in the past few years. So they've always been skeptical, in some cases hateful toward the media, but it's up from 76% 2 years ago and 68% in 2010. So the number of Republicans who think media has a negative impact on society has increased.
Yeah, so on the media, I'm split because we're very frustrated with the media, and I think that they, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, they have an establishment bias. They don't admit to it. That's why they've lost credibility both on the left and the right. I was surprised to find out some Democrats now have a better image of the media. Unfortunately, I think it's probably because of the nonstop Trump bashing. So I think they look at it and go, that media I can live with. That's my guess.
I think that guess is right. Yeah.
Oh, is right?
Is right. Yeah,
okay.
Because I mean, I watch a lot more cable news than you do, right?
Yeah, I don't watch it at all.
But also, it goes further than cable news. You know, the New York Times, the Washington Post, while these are not perfect publications and they've made their mistakes and we've criticized them for it in the past, all of a sudden you are seeing this reemergence of investigative journalism, and it's because they want to bring Trump down, right? Maybe you don't agree with what their underlying intentions are, but hey, all of a sudden we have this reemergence of investigative journalism and it's attacking a specific political party, a specific administration. I think that's why Democrats are now more favorable toward the media. So about as many Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents think the news media has a positive effect, 48%, as negative, 46% impact on the way things are going in the country.
44 and 46. So it's still, even with the improved ratings, it still tests negative even for Democrats. But again, I always want to tell you guys, we're not here to break the media like the Republicans are. We're here to fix the media. It's a giant difference.
Yep.
Okay, you want to go to the Arkansas story?
Yeah, let's move on. Lawmakers in Arkansas have passed a bill that would essentially force a woman who would like to get an abortion to speak with the person who impregnated her and come to an agreement about what should be done with the fetal remains. Now, this is another one of these personhood bills. It was something that was proposed earlier this year, and now, unfortunately, it has passed. Let's go to graphic 10. So it's HB 1566, and it includes aborted fetuses into the act, which means that both the mother and the father of the fetus will have to agree on what to do with the fetal remains. So what is HB 1566? So it's basically a provision on a law that already existed in the state. It's known as the Arkansas Final Disposition Rights Act of 2009, and that just said that certain family members have to agree on what to do with the body of a deceased family member. Now, the provision has been made to include fetal parts or a fetus. And so basically a woman has to go to the guy and be like, I'm gonna get an abortion. I guess I need to get first of all, permission to have this abortion. And then secondly, what are we gonna do with this fetus?
Okay, finally, back under our thumbs. I mean, I care about the life of the fetus. So this is, of course, a way of controlling people. And Not only do they have to get permission, but this could also apply to women who were impregnated by abusive partners or through sexual assault.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you were sexually assaulted or if you were impregnated because of a rape, you would still have to abide by this law. Keep in mind that Arkansas, it's a conservative state, so they already have some significant restrictions on reproductive rights. They only have about 4 abortion clinics. Women have to get anti-abortion counseling before they go through with the procedure. After the counseling, they have a 48-hour waiting period, and then they can go through with the abortion. But it's just interesting because, I mean, look, you got to give credit to these lawmakers because they care about life, Cenk. They care about children. They want to protect these children, right? Which is why the state of Arkansas has approximately 22,000 homeless kids. They really care about kids.
No, but Anna, to be fair, they're already out of the womb, so they don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Life only applies inside the womb, which then of course brings up me to my favorite topic. So look, this is Sharia law. I'm not interested in what your religion thinks of abortion. We need to make laws based on reasonable ideas that we all agree to. That's called a democracy, a secular democracy. But no, you want to impose your religious views on us. So it is now incumbent upon me to correct your religious views. You are wrong about what the Bible says. The Bible is pro-abortion. God is pro-abortion. So let me read it to you. These are not my words, this is the words of the Bible. You can look it up yourself in any Bible you find. Numbers 5:11 through 22, okay? Now this is gonna take a while, but it's good, so buckle up. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, so that another man has sexual relations with her, and this is hidden from her husband, and her impurity is undetected, since there is no witness against her and she has not been caught in the act, and if feelings of jealousy come over her husband, and he suspects his wife and she is impure, or if he is jealous and suspects her even though she is not impure, then he is to take his wife to the priest. Let's see what the priest does. He must also take an offering of 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour on her behalf. He must not pour olive oil on it or put incense on it. Well, of course not, because it is a grain offering for jealousy, a reminder offering to draw attention to wrongdoing. Okay, let's pause for 1 second there. So this stuff's in the Bible. Have you guys been doing this? Have you been taking your ephah or whatever that is, but not pouring the olive oil on it or incense, because it is an offering for jealousy? This is to cure the jealousy of the husband, because he's the one that matters. At the end of this particular provision in Numbers, they say, now remember, the husband is the one that matters. What happens to the wife is not important, okay? So that's a different portion of Numbers. Go read it for yourself. Okay, but don't pour the olive oil on there. You guys really believe this? You believe this? But if you do, this is part where you might be a little surprised. As we continue here in Numbers, the priest shall bring her and have her stand before the Lord. Then he shall take some holy water in a clay jar and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water, of course. After the priest has had some woman stand before the Lord, he shall loosen her hair and place in her hands the reminder offering, the grain offering for jealousy, while he himself holds the bitter water that brings a curse. Then the woman is to say, amen, so be it.
What?
Wait, so, okay. So the woman is supposed to say, oh, the cursed water, great. I'm glad you have done a curse. You guys believe this. You believe that there is a curse. How come you guys never do any of this? So it's funny how what you apply from the Bible and what you don't apply from the Bible. This is in the Bible, but you guys never do it, right? I haven't seen the curses yet. So let's find out what the result is. Hey, so save graphic 13, that's at the end, okay? So graphic 14a, this is continuing in the right order now in Numbers. Then the priest shall put the woman under oath and say to her, if no other man has had sexual relations with you and you have not gone astray and become impure while married to your husband, may this bitter water that brings a curse not harm you. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest is to put the woman under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become cursed among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. may this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells and your womb miscarries. I told you, God, the Lord himself, is pro-abortion. If you think that your wife cheated on you and you need a jealousy offering, well, the husband must be appeased. Make sure that you take a pinch from the tabernacle floor, create this potion, and make her drink it. And if she has actually cheated on you, God will make sure that it is aborted. I didn't say it, the Bible says it. Now, if you're a good Bible-fearing Christian, you better be pro-abortion right this minute. And finally, the end of the numbers that I promised you there. Quote, the husband will be innocent of any wrongdoing, but the woman will bear the consequences of her sin.
So is tabernacle floor what they use in like that abortion pill?
It could be, I don't know, yeah.
What is a tabernacle floor? Like,
apparently it's abortifacient, which I didn't know.
Wow.
Okay, so they're like, oh, here you go.
Yeah, that was really creepy.
Yeah.
And not enjoyable at all, but I'm glad you shared it.
Yeah, well, look, read the Bible. There's a lot of creepy stuff in there. And don't blame me, I didn't write the Bible. So if you got a beef to pick with abortion, pick it with the Lord, because he is definitely in favor of it.
Yeah, let's take a break and just let that digest for a second.
Okay.
All right, we'll come back with more.
I hope your abdomen doesn't swell while it's digesting. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you, or Jenks. Fun for everybody.
But no Jenks.
Your mama writes in, demonizing education is a win-win for Republicans. Rich don't have to pay you or pay for you to get an education, and you are more susceptible to their propaganda. Oh, I'm sorry, she meant pay you as in like then you get less income, right? And you get the propaganda. Great point, your mama. Esmeralda Coccolini writes in, remember the original sin of Adam and Eve, eating from the tree of knowledge. Learning things is dangerous to radical Christians. Exactly right. By the way, it's true of all the religions, of course, not just Christianity. And Jeremy Kohler writes in, you know that most Christians would say about Numbers 5:11 through 22, well, that was in the Old Testament, we don't follow that now. Oh, great, so that means you don't believe in the Garden of Eden. So we're gonna stop this nonsense conversation about how the earth is 6,000 years old. You don't believe in Noah's Ark. You don't believe, by the way, that gay people are living in sin. Because I think all of the stuff against a man shall not lie with another man is all in the Old Testament. So we're done with all that, right? So, you like to pick and choose. You like certain parts of the Old Testament, so you just kind of want to keep it. And other parts, you're like, oh, that's unfortunate because that is a monstrous, horrific thing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to pretend that it doesn't exist. And by the way, did God make a mistake? Did he bring down the Old Testament? And then like 500 years later, be like, oh, my bad, man, that was just the first draft. Now I'm sending Jesus now, and that whole thing about abortion, I was just messing around with you. Instead, I'll just put some vague stuff in here about how life is awesome, and later you can interpret that to mean that I'm against abortion. Whatevs. I thought God was infallible, that's weird.
Yeah, I want to talk about flat earthers and lizard people in the postgame today.
Oh, excellent, finally truth. All right, let's go forward.
All right. Police in Georgia have reopened an investigation after a video involving alleged police brutality went viral and provided some new evidence in a case involving a cop who was beating a homeless woman with a baton. Now, the homeless woman is identified as Katie McCrary. However, the police official that you're about to see in this video, which is graphic, has not been identified. He is anonymous, but this took place on June 4th. And apparently the officer had gone to a Chevron station in response to a complaint about a woman begging for money. She's a homeless woman, she's at a Chevron station asking for money, which I think all of us have experienced at some point. And usually they're not dangerous people, but nonetheless, the owner of the Chevron station ended up calling the cops and things got violent. Now the cop claims that the woman tried to push him out of the way when he arrived on the scene. And then that warranted what you're about to see.
So let me just give a tiny bit more detail there, Anna, before we go to the video. So McCrary says she attempted to push me out of the way and walk out of the door, which I would think is mission accomplished. The guy called you to get rid of her, right? And she's leaving. Boy, this feels like it could have been resolved a lot easier. And so in all these cases, I always feel like, look, it's not an easy job. I mean, you got to deal with a homeless person who's not listening to you. That is not easy. So, and he says later she tried to reach out and grab his badge, grab the vest and the radio. Now that's what he put in his report.
Right.
But I'll tell you one other thing he put in his report after you watch the video.
Yeah, exactly. Let's watch the video, and then I want to give you his detailed report so you kind of see some of the inconsistencies. By the way, warning, the video is difficult to watch, so if you're uncomfortable, you should look away now. Let's take a look.
Hey, Kay, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting.
You're on your stomach. You're on your stomach.
Stop
You're on your
resisting.
stomach. You're on your stomach. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Just stop.
Put your hands behind your back.
Stop. Stop, Katie. Stop,
Stop
Katie.
resisting, Kay. Stop resisting. Stop resisting,
Put your
Kay.
hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your
Let it
back,
go. I'm gonna
Kay.
shoot you. Let it go. I'm gonna shoot you.
No,
Let
please,
it go. I'm
don't
gonna
shoot
you.
him.
Put your hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your back, Kay. Stop it
Put your
now.
hands behind your back.
I am
Put
trying.
your hands behind your back.
What did I do? What did I do?
All right. So I should note that she does have a mental illness. It's unclear what that mental illness is exactly, but a local news station spoke to a dozen individuals in the area who are familiar with her, who know her. They all said that she wasn't a problem, she never posed any type of risk, and she did have a history of mental illness. She is homeless, and again, she was there asking for money. Now,
guys, look. It's super tough to deal with a mentally ill homeless person. Nobody's saying it's easy, but you just saw that video, man. I don't know. I couldn't do that. Could you beat a mentally ill woman like that? She said she was gonna leave. Did he feel like that was a disrespect of his authority? I don't know what the station manager asked him to do. Did he ask for her to be arrested? I don't know. But you would think that, hey, she's bothering people asking for money. She says she's leaving, great, wonderful. We could have left it at that. I can't stomach doing that to somebody, let alone a mentally ill person. I mean, if they were gonna cause violence on others, I get it, man, that's what cops are for, right? Mm-hmm. But a mentally ill woman who is not listening to your orders, you couldn't figure out, like you thought what? Like she's disrespecting you? Not everything is disrespect. People are different, and if they called you because she's not able to respond to those requests, there might be a reason for that. Don't we do any training in this country? Yes, there are mentally ill people. Yes, some percentage of homeless people are mentally ill. No, the correct answer is not beating the living crap out of them.
So maybe I missed something, because I was under the impression that a cop can only open fire on someone who poses an imminent threat, right? And he said in that video very clearly, and he got a response from the people that were there, put your hands behind your back or I'm going to shoot you. And then two people were like, no, please don't shoot her, don't. Why are you gonna shoot her? Like, is she posing a threat to you? And maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not the policy. Maybe the new policy is if someone's annoying you and isn't listening to your orders in the fashion that you think is appropriate, then you get to open fire.
By the way, if you shoot and kill someone, that could be murder. But if you threaten to shoot someone, that's already a crime. That's an assault. Now, if
not for cops.
Yeah. Now, if you said that to a cop, you'd definitely be arrested. Hey, don't do X, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. Right? That's assault, and even if you never pulled a gun or anything like that. Now, cops got a job where they have to threaten violence sometimes. I know that it's slightly different rules, but it can't be that if you're under no imminent threat at all. Like nobody thought that woman was somehow magically going to kill the cop, right? So threatening to kill her or shoot her, which would kill her, certainly could, is assault, let alone the other obvious assault that's happening on the tape.
So this video is new, which is why officials have decided to reopen the investigation into this case. They had already decided that he had done no wrongdoing and they wanted to move on. But this video went viral and they're like, okay, well, we have new evidence. We have to look at this again. Now, I want to give you the details of the police report that this unidentified cop had filed, so you kind of have a sense of his side of the story and what he believed happened. So in the incident report dated June 5th, a day after this took place, the officer said when he arrived at the gas station, McCrary attempted to push me out of the way and walk out the door. Okay, more words were exchanged and McCrary reached out and grabbed my badge, and after being warned not to touch him, she, quote, grabbed my vest and radio, according to his incident report. He said he used his baton on her legs, forearms, and one strike inadvertently struck the side of her head as she was moving around. So that was his take. I think it's a little different from what we saw in the video, but again, I mean, it's being investigated. We'll see how it turns out, but it's an internal affairs investigation. And I mean, we have some precedent on how things like that turn out.
And in this case, we also have a quote from the DeKalb County Police Department. They said in a statement after watching the video, quote, the narrative in the officer's report appears to be consistent with the video.
Yeah.
So now, to be fair, he didn't say he inadvertently struck her. He said he inadvertently struck her head. But the rest of it was not inadvertent. It was very clear what he was doing. And look, it's not just about that this guy's a bad guy. That's too easy an explanation. And I don't even know that he's a bad guy. I mean, I know that this was a bad act. I do know that the training is don't ever let anyone disrespect you. And so in reality, what they need to do, and some police departments across the country are doing this, is bring in mental health experts. So yes, it's gonna take longer, it's gonna take a bigger part of your day. But hey, I need backup in this case, and the backup is not more forces to get even more violent. I need someone who's a trained professional who can come and help me deal with this person who is clearly mentally ill, rather than my way of dealing with him, which is what I've been taught. Unfortunately, in most of the police departments in the country, is take out a baton and beat the crap out of them until they are made to listen to you. And those are the cases where they don't get shot.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to a somewhat fun story, shall we? All right. Beginning July 1st of this year, Nevada allowed the sale of recreational marijuana. However, and this is the fun part, apparently people wanted to get their hands on marijuana so much that about 2 weeks later, the state ran out. And now the governor is essentially calling a state of emergency in order to get enough pot to help serve medicinal patients in the state. It's amazing. So on Friday, Governor Brian Sandoval endorsed the department's call for a statement of emergency, which would allow for more licensed distributors. Now, here's the interesting part of the story. Keep in mind that there are all sorts of states that have legalized marijuana for both recreational or medicinal use, right? Or both. However, Nevada is the only state that has this temporary law that only allows alcohol wholesalers to have exclusive rights to move marijuana from growers to retailers. And it's a temporary court order that's extended in June by a Carson City District judge. So why? Why do you want alcohol wholesalers to be the only ones who can distribute the marijuana from the growers to the dispensaries, right?
There's an official reason and then there's a real reason. The official reason is, look, this product just became legal in this state, so it could be dangerous. So we're gonna need people who know how to transport things and do this for a living to transport it. The real reason is the alcohol guys who give money to the politicians go, hey, these guys are muscling in on our racket, so we gotta do something about this. And my guess is, and this is a guess to be fair, that they went and talked to the politicians and the politicians were like, well, how about if we let you run the transportation part of it so you're cut in on the business?
It's so pathetic because they know that as soon as people get their hands on that weed, weird timing for a cough.
Yeah.
But as soon as they get their hands on marijuana, I mean, it's just people who smoke marijuana usually aren't heavy drinkers, right? I feel like
it's cheaper. It's way cheaper to be.
It's cheaper. You're more likely to do it at home, right? So you're not going to bars and stuff like that. It's actually safer since you're not going to bars and then potentially drunk driving. But nonetheless, the alcohol industry has been fighting aggressively against legalizing marijuana. They have been spending a ton of money on it because they care about their bottom line. And it's pathetic.
But to be fair to them, I mean, as a business, they want to maximize profits. And when states legalize drugs, alcohol sales do go down.
They do go down.
So, and if we didn't have legalized bribery in this country, you'd be like, okay, well, that's a sad day for you, make a better product. But since we don't have real capitalism in this country, instead we have crony capitalism, they go, this is the same thing Tesla has to deal with. Like the old car dealers come in and go, it's this damn car, we can't compete with it.
Yeah.
Pass a law saying that they're not allowed to sell it. And so that happened in New Jersey and a couple other places in the way that they sell it, right? So in this case, it's not just the alcohol companies, it's also the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies. Their sales also go down. By the way, opioid abuse also goes down in states that legalize marijuana. But the drug companies think that's my product you're abusing and buying more of. So they also are fighting drug legalization. But as you can see, apparently the American people want it. They really, really want it. It's sold out immediately.
In less than 2 weeks.
My favorite part of the story is that the governor had to declare the emergency. Emergency, emergency, we're out of pot. Somebody go get me some weed.
Yeah, people were lined up, excited, just waiting at a dispensary for the clock to strike and for them to be able to buy recreational marijuana legally, which is, it is exciting and it is great, especially when you consider all of the collateral damage that came about because of the prohibition on marijuana. But I don't know why I want to share this comparison. Maybe it's stupid, but imagine if digital media was considered illegal and the only way to legalize it was if like cable news networks had to produce our content, right? Like, all right, we're gonna legalize digital media, but CNN's gotta produce your show, right? That's like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
CNN's gonna produce a good show for us?
So, well, look, real quick, it's not that far off from what we have in China. So in China, political content videos, and by the way, also porn is not allowed. We covered that on the show last week. And so that form of digital media is banned. But if you want to use digital media, you have to go with one of the large companies, large media companies in China that are pre-approved by the government. And so they know that they won't do anything the government doesn't want. So your analogy actually does exist. It's in China, and it's of course limits freedom tremendously, and it's done to protect the powerful over there. And same thing over here, done to protect the powerful, when in fact freedom means the freedom to also smoke marijuana, and 60% of Americans want it. So the real emergency is in states where pot is not legal. Okay, guys, for the Sirius Satellite Radio audience, we're out of time. Are we out of time for everything?
It's up to you, we can do more.
Okay, let's do 2 more stories for the online audience, so we'll be back in a second to do that. But you can catch the whole show ad-free if you go to tytnetwork.com/join and use promo code FREETYT to get a free trial membership for a whole month, okay? So, no, not the bye-bye yet. We'll do that for the online audience. We'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks. I'm just laughing at what we're talking about. All right, member shout-outs today are James Cool and Andy Phelps. And guys, Valar Morghulis, Game of Thrones is coming. Anna and I are going to do a preview show tomorrow, actually.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not necessarily going up tomorrow, but mainly what I want to tell you about is we're going to start doing the Sunday reviews again. So watch Game of Thrones with us, and then go, and then we'll do the review immediately thereafter. So all of it is going to be live on Facebook.com/whattheflick. So that's of course 10 p.m. Eastern is when the review starts for you guys. So that starts this Sunday, July 17th. Okay, what's next, Anna?
All right, let me just prep this. The opioid epidemic is hitting certain parts of the country hard, and Buffalo, New York is no exception. In fact, Buffalo area health officials blamed 300 deaths on opioid overdoses in 2016, and that was up from 127 2 years earlier. This is just one part of one state in the country. And so officials and judges in the area realized we need to handle this in a different way. We need to stop criminalizing people and give them an option to rehabilitate themselves. And so they took on an approach 2 months ago that actually has proven to be pretty successful. So the city is experimenting with the nation's first opioid crisis intervention court, which can get users into treatment within hours of their arrest instead of days. It requires them to check in with a judge every day for a month instead of once a week, and puts them on strict curfews. So keep in mind that this is not an easy program. It's pretty strict. Acceptance into the opioid crisis court means detox, inpatient or outpatient care, 8 p.m. curfews, and at least 30 consecutive days of in-person meetings with the judge.
So I love it. It's way past time. There's no reason to treat these people as criminals. And then of course now the media that Buffalo started doing this, they were like, wait a minute, yeah, these guys aren't criminals. They just need help, right?
Yeah.
Of course. And so they started talking about how, well, look, these are all non-violent guys who don't have a track record of doing crime. So I guess this makes sense. It makes sense everywhere. So I'm super happy that they're trying it in Buffalo, and I hope that the program spreads. But we shouldn't be locking people up for any kind of drug abuse in the first place. It's not to say that drug abuse is great, of course not. But it's something that needs to be treated, not something that private prisons can make money off of, or, by the way, have all of us pay for their imprisonment and make their situation worse, let alone the core of the issue, which is why are we taking their freedom away when this is not something that is a crime against the rest of us. The society needs to put you away for so we can be safe. Exactly. No, it's something that you need treatment for.
So as I mentioned, it started 2 months ago, and the Justice Department actually allocated $300,000 for this program in the form of a grant, and the results are already pretty promising. So 2 months in, none of the 80 people who agreed to the program had overdosed, though about 10 warrants had been issued for missed appearances. And keep in mind, they have to appear in front of a judge every day for a month. And so it doesn't surprise me that some people might have missed an appearance. I'm not excusing it, but if that's the worst outcome from this experiment, then I'll take it. And there have been a number of people who have testified about their experience so far, and they're like, look, I really wanted to get better, and now there's a program that's actually really helping me instead of demonizing or antagonizing me.
Yeah, and one guy had missed a court appearance, and they brought him in handcuffs, and he said, look, I really appreciate this program, because if I didn't have to report in every day, you wouldn't have come get me, and I might have taken fentanyl and died in the streets. Mm-hmm. So we needed different ways to solve the drug problem altogether. So I'm a little frustrated that it took the opioid situation for us to realize maybe we shouldn't be imprisoning our fellow citizens that need help. I wish we'd realized this decades ago before we started mass incarceration and locked away millions of people. And I hope that we go to address that injustice as well. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just have people rotting in jail for taking drugs, just like these folks took drugs. But for God's sake, let's at least get on the right road now, and Buffalo is a good step in that direction.
All right, final story for you guys. After a domestic. All right, a smart home device alerted authorities to a violent domestic dispute. And as a result, the individual who was threatening his girlfriend with a gun was successfully arrested. So to give you details on this, and I want to just be clear that it's unknown which home smart device it was. Eduardo Barrios was home-sitting at the residence with his girlfriend and their daughter. Barrios allegedly pulled a gun on his girlfriend when they got into an argument and asked her, "Did you call the sheriffs?" A smart device in the home apparently heard "call the sheriffs" and proceeded to call the sheriffs.
Oops.
So the cops arrived, and apparently it took some time to negotiate with him so he would put the gun down and let his girlfriend go. But in this case, this smart home device, which apparently is always listening, managed to help save someone's life, or potentially help save someone's life, which is great, but there's a downside to this as well.
Yeah, it's a little ironic that it's called a smart device when it got the situation totally wrong. He's like, did you call the sheriff? And she's like, okay, I will now call the sheriff. That's not what I said, dummy. Okay, no, look, great result in this case, but I am 1000% against this overall. This is a good story wrapped in a bad story. So they explain all the devices, doesn't matter who makes them, all those smart devices at home are always listening. So no thank you. Maybe the new school is, who cares about privacy? Let's all do freaky stuff in front of everybody and put it on the internet, and you get to find out every word I said and everything I did. And look, I lead an incredibly boring life, so my smart device would be tremendously bored, right? Can I call the sheriff just because we're not having any fun here? But as a general philosophy, no, maybe I'm old school, but I like my privacy. I don't want a device recording me nonstop every minute of the day inside my house. That's crazy.
Yeah. Look, I'm completely with you on this, and I know I'm probably gonna sound super ignorant because I don't have one of these devices and I'm not really sure of everything that they do, but I'm okay flicking a light switch on my own, right? Like, I'm okay turning the TV on by myself. Like, I don't need a home device to like do easy things for me.
Yeah, look, now
and I'm not judging people who have it. Like, I get it. It's like the new cool tech thing to have, right? But you gotta, do a cost benefit analysis, and I did it, and I just feel like my privacy is more important than having a device flick a light switch for me.
It's not even close. Look, I'll go Grandpa Jenk on you. I'm so old school that I had a TV where I didn't have a remote control. I had to get up and switch the channel.
That's uncalled for.
I know, I know, it seems unbelievable, right? But I did. And but so yes, on remote controls, and then let's draw the line, because it works. The up button and the down button works. It is, I think, harder to go, okay, Andrea, move the channel up. No, up, Andrea, oh, for God's sake, up, right? That is harder than just push the goddamn button, right?
Yeah.
So look, if you want to give up all of your privacy, have at it, Hoss, but it's not for me. And in this case, it was such a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's so worried that she's gonna call the sheriff that he accidentally called the sheriff.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Now, what we've all been looking forward to today. No, not the Joe Manchin interview. No, not the show where we found out Donald Trump Jr. is probably going to jail. But what Anna thinks of lizard people and aliens, that's in the postgame. TYTnetwork.com/join. Bye-bye.
Hey, take a look. It's in an audiobook. It's LeVar Burton, and he's the nerd of the week this week, not just for his normal amount of coolness of being Geordie LaForge forever, and also successfully bringing back Reading Rainbow through crowdfunding. He now has a podcast specifically for adult types like me, and possibly you, audience, I'm not sure, that's up to you, but it is so cool. It's LeVar Burton reading short stories to adults. So it comes in 30 to 60 minute ranges. There's 3 episodes out right now, and here's a little sample for you.
Closing his eyes, the boy could see the black synthetic skin the alien wore as protection against alien atmospheres. Under that suit, ropes of muscles and tendons coiled and uncoiled, rippling even when the alien was still. In the doorway, the long neck had not been extended, but he knew what it could do. When it telescoped forward, as it could instantly, the head tipped up in reflex and the jaws opened.
You do get a taste of LeVar Burton's buttery, breeze-like voice that is very calming to those of us who listen to him read as when we were children. It is out now. I highly recommend it. It is great for commutes or whatever you're doing. Maybe don't go to sleep to it if he's reading one of the scarier stories about monsters, or do if you're into that. I'm not a daredevil like you, but LeVar Burton reads, awesome podcast. Check it out. And LeVar Burton, because of that, is the Nerd of the Week. If you have a Nerd of the Week suggestion, please let us know below or on social media. And please like and subscribe for more. Pirates of the Caribbean is a classic Disney parks ride and also a diminishing movie chain. And because of this, well, not because of this, but along these lines, we are changing or seeing the changes from an old classic Disney scene into a new one updated for modern times and perhaps the future. You may remember, if you've been on the ride, that there is a scene of the bride auction. So in the scene you float by, the woman in the blue dress is being sold as a bride and she is being ignored for the more shapely, the redden, as they call her. We want the redden. And then behind her are ostensibly a bunch of, I would describe, less attractive women who look pretty upset about the whole situation as they're bound in ropes and chains. So that is going to be updated for the future. And a lot of people do seem to have problems with this. I mean, it is going to, of course, as soon as there's some kind of change, there's always going to be an outcry. But I think the way Disney described this, which was, it was going beyond political correctness, it is now kind of, or inadvertently, sort of telling something to their younger guests about women being sexualized and sold at auction. And they decided to change this. This is along the lines of changing the chase scenes, which come immediately after this in the show, from being ostensibly a rape story into, oh, the pirates want food. This is more of a fun and lighthearted scene as opposed to sort of looking at the idea of rape and having kids ask what this is. In the new scene, it will look something like this. So we still have, it looks like the same pieces in the set. We have the red one, I don't know what to call her, the red wench, the blue dressed woman, and some of the other people who were in line before, but now it's an auction for stuff, surrender your loot. And what I like about this is that the red-haired woman is now taking charge of the scene. She's actually the first female pirate in the entire ride. And she's like an Anne Bonny type or Mary Read. I love that. I love, because she's a very popular character. And now she has taken some kind of agency in this. And instead of seeing the weeping, less attractive women, we see that they are actually aristocrats who are being robbed, looted. And that's a lot less, I think that's more in line with the spirit of the ride, at least. Now, some people are agreeing that this ruins the ride. I would disagree, because if we're going on the nostalgia track, the ride was ruined a long time ago when they added Jack Sparrow and all these mentions of Jack Sparrow. I don't think Walt Disney envisioned us going through a mist with a projected picture of Davy Jones. You know, I be Davy Jones. The sea awaits you and me, Davy Jones. Let's get aboard with Davy Jones. By the way, my name is Davy Jones. I don't think Walt wanted that. So along that argument, it's always changing. There's always this idea that Disneyland is never done. It's always changing, it's always getting better. And I like this scene a lot. I think it adds to the spirit of the ride. It's in line with what the creators originally wanted. And I think it leads a better message to kids, honestly. I think that's worth it more than whatever my nostalgia is for the past. Audience, do you agree? Let us know below, and please like and subscribe for more. From the maker of Iron Fist and the last season of Dexter comes a new show from Marvel, starring clip art of the moon, a bad wig, and some other stuff. Let's take a look.
We've been hiding here too long. Let's go to our rightful home. If we were on Earth, we would have a glorious planet to live on, thrive on.
You're talking about betraying your brother. You're talking about treason.
You're blind to his intentions. Right or wrong, he's dangerous.
What I'm talking about is freedom. Freedom for all Inhumans. Are you going to use your voice to kill your only brother? Stop it! What the?
let anyone or anything stop us. We will create our destiny.
So that's a thing. I don't need to point out that this looks really cheap and looks more like something you might spot on Sci-Fi than something you would spot on ABC. A lot of people have been worried about it, including myself. There are some cool parts on it. I think the idea of the royal family of Attilan and the idea of Inhumans in general is really cool because they're ancient humans that have been experimented on by the Kree. I mean, maybe we'll see Kamala Khan later, but I mean, that's a big maybe. Maybe if they get a season 2. It seems like there are a lot of issues that might be a problem later on. For instance, they have the main character as Black Bolt. However, he cannot talk because he has powers. It's varied. Sometimes he whispers and it could be devastating. Sometimes he shouts, but he can't talk. And I've been reading in interviews that Scott Buck, who is the showrunner for this, doesn't want to use voiceover for the character. So he's ostensibly a silent, stone-faced lead, which will generally end up being a blank slate at least. It looks like Maximus will be taking the lead, and because, well, he said every word in the trailer. Something that was a little upsetting was we saw Serinda Swan as Medusa, and 1, her wig was bad. 2, her hair didn't do anything. The thing about that character is her hair is prehensile. It can do things, it moves around. It's very dynamic, and here it was static. If it's going to look bad, it has to do things, and if it doesn't do things, it should look good. But that didn't happen with her at all. I would say the best part of the trailer, which is what everyone seems to be happy about, is Lockjaw, the teleporting dog creature, which is cute. And you know, maybe the effects aren't the best, but I would say that is the bright spot. A lot of it did look fairly cheap in terms of the set, in terms of various clip art being used. I think it's because they shot it in IMAX and maybe spent the money on that instead. You can watch the first episode in an IMAX theater. However, if you would rather keep your money, I would say don't. What do you think so far? Does it have potential? Could it get better? Could it be up to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Will it cross over with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I mean, right now, it looks like no, there's no talk so far. I think it looks like a mess. I think my time is finite. I don't know if I'll be watching this. Will you? Let me know below why, and please like and subscribe for more. I have disturbing news. The Jumanji reboot looks good, and I'm interested in seeing it. Let's take a look.
Damn, that is a man right there. Don't cry, don't cry. Don't cry, it's gonna be okay. This is a video game, which means we all have special skills.
Why am I running so slow?
That was so intense. I can't even with this place.
Watch your step in here.
Studio crew is disagreeing with me that it looks fun. Some of us like fun, okay? They get it in the booth. So I like this kind of reboot because it's not essentially a pointless remake. You may remember in the original Jumanji, it drew animals and a bad guy, Hunter, out of the board game into the real world. But in this one, 4 bad teens are in detention when they pick up a vintage console and start playing a video game, and they get sucked into the game, and their types kind of get switched up. The Rock has a teenager who is kind of shy, kind of sensitive kind of guy, and Jack Black is, the alpha girl, the hot girl. Karen Gillan, who now it is explained why she's dressed like that. She is an avatar in an old game. Perhaps they will address it comedically. I like the way they're handling it so far, is more of a shy girl, kind of like a weird Ali Sheedy type. And lastly, we have an athlete in Kevin Hart's body who he does not like being short now. I think it looks fun for what it is. It's not going to be the next allegory of human nature that changes the world. It's a fun movie, and I do like that they seem to take some kind of change from the original. I wouldn't have liked it if they had just done this is Robin Williams' character's son, and he's back, opens the video game, the board game, and whatever happens. It's It's different. I'm interested in seeing it. Audience, do you feel like these two haters in the production room? Let me know what you think below, and please like and subscribe for more. Is it safe to go in the water this summer? According to some recent carcasses, no. But these aren't what you might think. Great white shark carcasses have been washing up on the shores of South Africa, and they've looked kind of unusual. Let's take a look. Something has been eating the sharks. These are images that came from Marine Dynamics Dyer Island Conservation Trust, who has been investigating this. This is a South African conservation program. So what looks to have happened is that killer whales have been eating the sharks. In the past, this has happened before. 1997, there was an orca on shark attack off the California coast, but now this is centered around Africa, and there have been 4 of these carcasses since May. Usually in the past, killer whales do eat the liver specifically out of great whites, particularly for squalene, which is a nutrient inside that they like. But more than the liver is getting eaten. Now we're seeing genitals, now we're seeing stomachs being eaten as well, and it's not exactly clear why. Some marine biologists think that it's possible they were just removed when they were removing the liver and everything is just all attached inside, or if they are actually eating them or not. It's a little disturbing to look at, though, while they figure out what's going on or if more carcasses show up. So this is just a reminder to you, there's something else in the water that you may want to think about. We know people like porn, but what kind of porn? This is something that's kind of hard to figure out because we have a history of people giving different answers when they know they're being watched, when they know they are answering something that someone else is going to read, perhaps a survey, perhaps a Q&A. So it's hard to tell what people will tell the truth in. However, author Seth Stevens-Devotowitz, who recently wrote Everybody Lies, a book that uses data on America's Google habits, has found a more interesting way in examining data and determining what it is we actually want. See, the incentive in answering, let's say a survey, you would change your answer to kind of seem more, I would say, conventional to whoever the survey taker is. But when you're looking for something in Google, you're alone. You think no one's watching you. You think this is where I'm going to get what I want. The incentive is you want whatever porn it is you like, so you're gonna get it, no one's watching you, that's how it goes. So he appealed to a lot of he researched a lot of data and examined it from Google, from dating sites, from Pornhub. Pornhub releases its data sometimes. I get them at least in press releases. And it's interesting to see what people are actually searching for as opposed to what people actually answer in surveys, because again, that's how you're gonna find out what people actually want. So he found that a few interesting tidbits, which I will share. One is that 20% of women, straight women who watch porn, actually prefer lesbian porn, which is not that surprising. But he did find that according to his searches, a lot of people are actually in the closet. So maybe they won't come out as homosexual, but secretly they will be and continue to be. According to him, in places where it's hard to be gay, such as Mississippi, far fewer men say they are gay than in places where it's easy to be gay, such as New York, but gay porn searches are about the same everywhere. He found that about 5% of men are predominantly attracted to men. The #1 question women have about their husbands is whether he is gay, especially in the Deep South, where his data has confirmed that there are more gay men married to women. And what they found was women were 8 times more likely to ask Google if their husband is gay, as opposed to asking if he's an alcoholic, and 10 times more likely to ask that than if he is depressed. Though statistically, it's more likely that he is an alcoholic or that he is depressed. It's just that is where I suppose the human mind goes automatically. He also found about 1 in 100 porn searches are for elderly porn. And along that line, most people would want to keep that probably private, as well as something else he found that according to his data from dating sites, men are more likely to try and date skinny women. However, there's data on the other side of that into porn, which would show they might like women with more weight on their bones than that, but they are choosing to date skinny women to perhaps appeal to what they think society wants, or trying to impress someone, their family, their friends, what have you. So that's an interesting thing, that, or a side of people that they've kept hidden, at least according to this data. What he also found was that the #1 Google search in India that starts with "my husband wants" is "my husband wants me to breastfeed him." He found porn featuring adult breastfeeding was far more highly searched and watched in India as opposed to everywhere else. However, when people in India were asked about this, they almost uniformly said no. So it's kind of, that incentive versus being aware that conventional society is watching you, I suppose. So it's interesting. And he found in his research of this, it did change his views on sexuality, which are, he thought, evolutionarily speaking at least, that people should be attracted mostly to a heterosexual partner and in order to reproduce from an evolutionary standpoint. However, they found that less than 20% of porn watched these days features vaginal sex to completion among two people who can conceivably have a healthy baby, which goes to say that sex has other purposes besides procreation. What a revelation. He also found, interestingly enough, according to his data model, anal sex will pass vaginal sex in porn within 3 years. Get ready for that, y'all. You're on the internet now. What do your Google autocomplete say? Don't tell us below. Tell us something else, and please like and subscribe for more.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Got a big show ahead for you guys. We're gonna break a story for you that one of our reporters, or we're gonna cover a story that one of our reporters broke about Comcast. Interesting. A little bit later in this program, Ivanka Trump goes and sits in for Daddy. That's a fascinating story. I'll tell you about that in the second hour. Anna is gonna join me on that hour. And then later in this hour, the big story that's going around, Donald Trump Jr., I am already hearing chants of lock him up, lock him up. I actually have not heard those chants, but perhaps we'll start them on today's show. Many people accusing Donald Trump's son of literal treason. So we'll discuss why and if it has merit a little bit later in the program. So first, a fun little story about how you should never ever back up the president. Okay. So Rex Tillerson is, of course, Secretary of State, former CEO for ExxonMobil. And of course, as the Secretary of State, he has to back up his boss. And they famously had this meeting with the Russians a couple of days ago, and there was only a couple of people in the room. And on our side, it was just Trump, Rex Tillerson, and an interpreter. And on their side, it was just Putin, their foreign minister, Lavrov, and an interpreter. So now what message Tillerson wants to put out is, look, we were tough on Russia. Now, were they actually tough on Russia? Not at all. How are they tough on Russia? Well, we brought up the idea of collusion a couple of times, and including right in the beginning. And what happened after you brought it up? Putin said he really, really didn't do it, so we have to, quote, move forward. Now, that's a Rex Tillerson quote. In fact, I'm going to give you the full quote, which is the relevant part of this story in a second. So, in other words, you weren't tough on the Russians at all. So there's no threat of any consequences for their meddling in our election. There was just no repercussions whatsoever. You just brought it up, they said we didn't do it, and you said, oh, okay, fine, let's move forward. Well, no, Tillerson says, no, the issue of the sanctions were brought up. In fact, this is now from the Washington Post, the day after. Trump told Putin that members of Congress were pushing for additional sanctions against Russia over the election issue, Tillerson said. So that's Tillerson saying that, and here's a direct quote from Tillerson. But the two presidents, I think, rightly focused on how do we move forward, he added. Okay, so there's we brought up the issue and then we decided we're not gonna do anything about it and we move forward. That was clear enough anyway. But there, he at least said, hey, we discussed the sanctions, okay? So get off our back. So what does Trump do the very next day after Tillerson tells that to the press? Rex, meet the underside of a bus. He tweets out, sanctions were not discussed at my meeting with President Putin. Nothing will be done until the Ukrainian and Syrian problems are solved. So get a load of that tweet. Number one, Rex, what are you doing? Everybody knows that if you go to back up the president and you lie for him, he will throw you under a bus unwittingly because he doesn't know anybody, he's an idiot. He's an unguided missile. He should say that you discuss sanctions because that would seem more tough on Russia. But he can't help himself. He comes out and goes, sanctions? Why would we talk about sanctions? I didn't mention that at all. Oh, Rex, did I already tell you to lie and say that we mentioned sanctions? Well, somebody's got to tell the president in more than tweet length that happened so he doesn't undermine his own officials. Okay, so there again, the president tells somebody to go do something and then contradicts it right afterwards. But if you notice, the second part's also important. He said in the second part of that tweet, nothing will be done about the sanctions until the Ukrainian and Syrian problems are solved. You know what that means? There ain't gonna be no sanctions. Gee, Trump is thinking about it this way. The Russians helped me win that election. Should I put sanctions on them for that? He's like, of course not. I'm not gonna put sanctions on them. They're the ones who helped me get elected president. So I love this infinite timeline of whenever Syria gets resolved, then we'll move on to sanctions. Yeah, when there's peace in the Middle East, Trump will do something about the Russians. They're never, ever going to do anything about it because they love the Russian meddling in the elections, and whatever small lies that Rex Tillerson was putting out there are quashed by Trump himself. As usual, very poorly played. Okay, so now that's them. Now let's go to Comey. So all of a sudden, there's an interesting talking point about James Comey and those memos he wrote regarding how Trump asked him to end the investigation on Flynn. Now, that was big news because that could be perceived as obstruction of justice. At the time, James Comey's the head of the FBI. Trump pulls him aside. The president says, hey, stop the investigation on Flynn. Comey, according to his own testimony, takes a memo about that right afterwards and puts it on the record in the FBI. And once he's no longer the FBI director, after Trump fired him, he comes out and says, yeah, I wrote it down immediately after he told me so that it's on the record. Okay, so you know that part of the story. Well, now there's an attack against Comey saying that some of the stuff that he had in those memos might have been classified, and did he leak stuff that was classified? So it was on Drudge Report, so it must be true. And also on Fox, well, let's check that out.
Remember when James Comey testified the material he leaked to a friend was not classified?
Yeah, my view was that the content of those unclassified, the memorialization of those conversations was my recollection recorded.
Well, it turns out he actually may have broken the rules. A brand new bombshell report accuses Comey of putting our national security at risk. According to The Hill, the former FBI director's personal memos detailing private conversations with President Trump contained top secret information.
Top secret information. Actually, I don't think I read the Hill story. I don't think they use the words top secret. Top secret and classified are different. I'm trying to explain that to a Fox anchor. Anyway, so is it true? I mean, that would be very hypocritical of James Comey because you remember what he said about Hillary Clinton of all people. He said that, quote, there is evidence that they, meaning the Clinton office, were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Of course, he famously did not pursue charges against her, but did upbraid her in that press conference where he gave that quote. So if it turns out he leaked stuff that is classified, boy, that would be an interesting charge of hypocrisy, and some Republicans might revel at that given that Comey's a thorn on Trump's side right now. Some Democrats might secretly snicker as well. Well, the question is it true? Well, everybody's quoting the same guy, John Solomon at The Hill. So let me quote him for you too so you get the full context, and then let's talk about who John Solomon is. Comey testified last month before the Senate Intelligence Committee that he considered the memos to be personal documents and that he shared at least one of them with a friend. He asked that friend, a law professor at Columbia University, to leak information from one memo to the news media in hopes of increasing pressure to get a special prosecutor named in the Russia case after Comey was fired as FBI director. Now, all that is true. That's right. That's a good beginning to the story. That just explains what Comey did in the past. So then he says, more than half of the memos former FBI Director James Comey wrote as personal recollections of his conversations with President Trump about the Russia investigation have been determined to contain classified information, according to interviews with officials familiar with the documents. Interesting. I wonder who those guys are. So Solomon continues, this revelation raised the possibility that Comey broke his own agency's rules and ignored the same security protocol that he publicly criticized Hillary Clinton over in the waning days of the 2016 presidential election. So now, if true, that would be interesting. I don't know if it'll rise to the level of actionable. Comey might have to do a press conference where he says, well, I'm not pursuing myself, but what I did was extremely careless. He's no longer the FBI director, so he wouldn't do that. But it would be a nice gotcha moment, if that turns out to be the case. And Democrats, like I said, might secretly rejoice a little bit, but mainly the Trump administration would be like, yes, that discredits him and we're done with him. Even though it doesn't actually discredit the stuff in the memo at all. What it does is politically attack James Comey for revealing what's in the memo. It doesn't make the memos any less true, let alone the fact that I'm not convinced that this is the case. Again, we'll get back to who the author of this article is in a second. Now, speaking of which, John Solomon writes, to give you a sense of how much of a witch hunt there's going to be now on Comey, in order to make an assessment, congressional investigators will have to tackle key questions, such as where and how the memos were created, including whether they were written on an insecure computer or notepad, where and how the memos were stored, such as inside Comey's home, in a briefcase, or on an insecure laptop, whether any memos were shown to private individuals without a security clearance, and whether those memos contained any classified information. And when it was determined by the government that the memos contained classified information before Comey took them and shared one or after or another. Okay, so in other words, James Comey, if you wrote that memo on a notepad right after the Trump meeting in your car and put it in your briefcase, I don't know, was it properly secured? Was it classified? If it was classified, you wrote it on an unsecured notepad and you wrote it on a desk and the desk is unsecured. He's the FBI director. And I don't know. We're gonna have to look at every nook and cranny. Were you eating lunch? What lunch were you eating when you wrote that note? Did you write the note? Did you speak the note? Was anybody else in the room? So look, if you thought there was a real issue that James Comey accidentally shared classified information with the Russians, the Chinese, the public, and blurted out like, hey, here's my memo. Oh, here's me talking with Trump, which is unclassified, about how he wants me to end the investigation. And here's the nuclear codes right underneath it. Then yeah, then get into his lunch and whether he wrote it on a goat or on a boat, right? But this is basically saying, we're coming to get you, James Comey. Oh, you thought and you claim very clearly that they were unclassified. They were just recollections of your meeting with Trump. There's nothing classified about that. You say potato, I say potato, brother. Okay, and where's your notepads? Because I am coming to invade your life. So, is it true? Well, John Solomon is the person who wrote it here. Look, you look at The Hill. Everybody's saying The Hill, nobody's saying John Solomon. The Hill is reporting Comey's private memos on Trump conversations contain classified material. Right underneath it, we highlighted for you John Solomon. So who is John Solomon? He works at The Hill now, but here is two of his previous employers. He was editor-in-chief of the Washington Times, which is a conservative propaganda outlet run by, or at least previously run by, I don't know who owns it today, owned by Reverend Moon, some lunatic that wanted to pursue a lot of different things, including his right-wing agenda. And then, but that's not an exaggeration, by the way. Look it up, or look up Reverend Moon, lunatic. Chief Creative Officer also for Circa News. Circa News Haven't heard of them. That sounds kind of interesting, right? Yeah, they're owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, right-wing media outlet that does propaganda for Donald Trump, against Barack Obama in the past. They own a lot of local TV stations. John Oliver recently did a great story about them. We have covered them in the past, and local television is where a lot of people unfortunately still get their news and certainly get their political ads. And Sinclair Broadcasting will put conservative op-eds in without clearly labeling that they're op-eds or that they're from headquarters into local news with absurd propaganda in them. And Circa was their digital effort to do this. And if you look up articles in Circa, it is one after another defending Donald Trump, criticizing his opponents, et cetera, et cetera. So the guy who wrote this story is a person who's run many conservative outlets. I don't, look, now he works for the Hill, so I don't know to what degree they had an obligation to point out that the writer of this article is deeply conservative. And you don't have to say deeply, however conservative he is, but he clearly worked for very, very conservative outlets that have a very clear track record. But they never mention any of that. I'm not saying the guy can't write the article. I'm not saying he can't even write a straight news article if mainly he worked on commentary in the past. Maybe a little note to let us know. So right now, I think we're among the very few outlets talking about that. Everybody else is like, oh, the Hill is reporting. The Hill is reporting from an incredibly conservative source that James Comey, questionable. So suffice it to say, I'll believe it when I see it. So right now, there is no evidence outside of anonymous sources from a very conservative writer that this is true, and then reverberating through Drudge and Fox News, two outlets who also have about zero credibility. So now you know. Okay, when we come back, Donald Trump Jr., what kind of trouble is he in? And does it involve handcuffs? It might. I'm not.